Welcome, welcome. Today I am talking all about stories. Stories is like the sweet spot when it comes down to selling your services and really truly building connections with people on social media. I know a lot of times we like to just share like personal things and like here's my dog, here's my cat, here's what I'm doing for the day. But you can do all of those type of things and still be able to sell your services and build those genuine connections with your people. So that's what we're talking about today. We're going to break it down in between the two different types of content that you need to be sharing within your stories. And it's just going to be so good. Let's get into it. Okay, so today we're talking all about how to sell in your stories. Again, as I said, it is the most important place where you can put the most of your energy at. Here's where you can hang out at if you do not have time to show up 3, 4, 5 times a week in your feed. And like, this is where you can really show up in real time and just make the most out of social media. Also, this is where your ideal client is hanging out at. So you want to make sure that you're meeting them right where they're at. So let's talk about it. Okay, so what is your story's purpose? We really need to connect with this first. So, your stories is a place where you can connect with your ideal client and be social on social media. Really, truly leverage that. Most people that watch your stories are simply story watchers or people who feel connected with you on a soul to soul level. So, what I mean by this is that sometimes people don't really pay attention to like your feed posts when they get on social media to consume. They really like to just watch people's stories. So they kind of treat it like Snapchat, which was actually their originator of stories, right? They like to just really watch that real time, up to date type of thing. And typically the content there is a lot more different than what was actually presented on the feed post. So while they may not be interactive on your feed, it's not that they're not paying attention to it there. They're just a lot more interactive and paying attention in your stories. And so you want to make sure that you are diversifying your content strategy to make sure that you are in front of these people because they like to consume content differently. And also, they are a lot more closer to you. It's like a closer proximity to the access that they get to you because the content typically in your stories is a lot more raw, it's a lot more vulnerable, and it's a lot more straight to the point, right? So they are building that trust with you and literally connecting like that soul to soul type of connection. And they feel more comfortable with you after spending a lot of time there. So, why should you utilize stories as a holistic business owner? First, you have to understand that your stories is where your warm audience is at, is where your ideal client is hanging out at. And the people who is in your stories want to learn about you, your business, and your service. So, again, they're building that trust with you. They need to build that trust with you in order for them to feel comfortable enough to say that I'm going to make this investment and to buy into your coaching program for those who have a hybrid between hands on and coaching, or to book a service with you, right? Because booking a service with you could be something that they do here and there, but still they need to be able to build that trust to say that I'm going to let you work on my face, or I'm going to get undressed and be vulnerable on the table so that way you can provide a massage and any other holistic service it is that you do. They need to feel comfortable with you in order for them to be able to step into being the person that they need to be in order for them to make a transformation, because that's what you have to understand. Like, your clients as well is going through a level of a transformation. So even if they're just coming in for a one-off session, sometimes for some people that takes a lot. And so you have to understand that they need to be able to have that trust built up with you in order for them to be able to move forward. So you want to utilize your stories to make sure that you are really getting into the emotions of your ideal client and just making sure that they understand why it's important that they work with you in particular. Okay, so when should you post? This is a question that I get all the time. So I just want to make sure that this was popped in here so that we can have clarity around this concept. Because oftentimes, as business owners, right, we are busy. And so, like, being able to find that time where we can say that we're going to show up and be consistent within our stories, it can have us all over the place. And so, this is just a good way to be able to look at it. And so, for one, I have these time frames. I want you to just take a moment to think about your ideal client. Like, really think about your person, even if you have it understood who your ideal client is or not. I want you to have an open mind of the type of person that it is that you want to work with. What are they typically doing around different times of the day, like morning, afternoon, evening? Like, what does their typical day look like? So, for example, If you're working with stay-at-home moms or busy moms, typically they're dropping their kids off between like 7 and 8 or what have you. I've been out of school for a couple of years, so I don't know. So like, just think about it. They're probably dropping their kids off or getting ready to get their kids together and things of that nature in the morning. They're probably on their way to the commute or coming back and cleaning up around the house or something like that. That's typically what their morning routine looks like. And so if you are trying to target these people, you want to make sure that for your beginning stories that you are in front of them at the time frame where they're going to be more open to be on their phone. That makes sense. And so again, in the middle of the day, maybe they have this free time because they are a stay-at-home mom, and typically between 12 and 3 is when they actually have a little bit of a break, and this is when they can come in and get their massage, or this is when they're actually going to be like glued to their phone and actually get their doom scroll or whatever, and they get to see your stories. Again, in the evening, maybe your person is just coming home, they're getting off work, they're getting settled, and they're looking at your stories over dinner, right? Just think about the typical scenario of what your client is going to be doing, and just understand that stories roll out for 24 hours. So even if your typical person is eating dinner around 6, they might see your story at 8, and it may be something that resonates with them, and they feel compelled to actually want to move forward, interact, or what have you. So next I have, whenever you have the time and energy, because when you are busy, it's just so hard to be able to know when you can really truly show up. So it's nothing wrong with posting in your stories at 8 o'clock in the morning and being done with it. And it's nothing wrong with coming in your stories at 8 o'clock at night and being done with it, right? It depends on the context of whatever it is that you're trying to share. It's totally okay to be able to just pop up in your stories. They roll out for 24 hours. And for the person who is going to come in and they really want to see what you have going on, any updates that you may be sharing, they don't care about the time of day. They just want to be able to support you. They're buying into you. And that's what you have to understand. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the end, but if it's just that you already have a few pieces of content that's already created, just go ahead, make sure that you have the text for that, copy and paste it, create your stories, and then just go ahead and roll them out. Like, the biggest thing is it can be easy. So if you have 3 slides it is that you want to go ahead and put out, do that. If you have 30 slides, you have to figure out the time to be able to make sure that you have that. But it's really about keeping it simple and posting whenever you have the time. Another thing is, as I have here, to stay into the algorithm, it's recommended to post 2 to 3 days in a row and then allow your stories to expire for 24 hours and then come back. As of late, I've been noticing that like when you post a lot of stories, or when you post a lot of stories all of the time, sometimes you don't get that reach that you could, and you don't see a lot of viewers. Now, I don't want you to get hung up on that. I really do not want you to get hung up on the metrics when it comes down to how many people is watching my stories, who is watching my stories. It's going to have you in the chokehold. It's going to have you all over the place. Post your content, get off the app. That's how I need you to be operating when it comes down to you making sure that your content is put out there, because that takes that pressure off. And it also doesn't discourage you when you see that you have 10 people watching your stories. I have sold a paid in full program to someone who, in which I only had 7 people on my email list. The numbers is not really the thing that really truly matters the most. It's about who is in those numbers, and it's about the fact that you're speaking the language of what your ideal client needs to understand. So do what you have to do, but yeah, giving yourself like a little bit of a schedule. So if you want to pop up in your stories all of the time, think something like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday type of thing, right? Where you allow those stories to expire. But even if you want to come in, pop in every day, just know that maybe 10 slides is probably not always ideal. So that way you can make sure that you're getting those views and you're not bombarding people, if you would. But do what you have to do. You know what's going to work for you and your audience. I just want to just like plug that in there, okay? So I gave you the consistency about like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that typically just seems to work when you're getting into the motion and building that muscle to start putting your content out on the platform. Okay, these are the 2 types of content that you need to be creating in your stories at all times. Stories that build rapport and stories that build revenue. At all times, we need to be thinking about how can I build a connection with someone, really build that rapport, really build these relationships with people, because these are real life people. And if you're trying to seek a new client, majority of these people that you're trying to build a connection with, right, are strangers. You know, we have friends and family that may be on our page and that supports us, but for the most part, they're not always our ideal client. And we want to make sure that we're building connections with people in which whom we think or know is actually an ideal client, right? And then the stories that build revenue, because there needs to be a balance between you connecting with people and building that rapport. The people who are in your audience and who is open to building a connection with you, they are actually looking for you to sell to them. They need to have clarity over your services. And so we have to have an equal balance between saying, like, here's what I'm doing, this is my self-care routine, and here's how I can help you. It's really truly important for your ideal client to be able to make sure that they're stepping into their power and executing on their transformation.